Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome along then to PSGL PCF5 for round number 8 of this season 30, whatever it is. We're on 31 here in PSGL. My name is Daniel Gilligan, and alongside me today in the virtual commentary box, it is Alex who's joining us today. We had Punju last week, and then usually we have, of course, Reese Gregory, but Reese is not available this week. So we are once again getting someone new, someone fresh into the commentary box. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Obviously, always nice to get an opportunity trying something new, and here I am today.
Excellent, good stuff. Just wait until you've actually done one and let us know at the end how much you've enjoyed it or not. We'll have to wait and see. Now, of course, we'll build up towards our usual enthusiasm over the course of the stream, I'm sure, because in light of today's events, I think it wouldn't be quite right if we jumped in straight away being as enthusiastic as we normally would. Whilst we watch some cars go on the outlaps then to start their qualifying session here in Brazil, let's just talk through a couple of bits and pieces about the season so far and about our current championship standing. So, currently leading the way is Fionn McKee, who you can see there in the McLaren on your picture. Just been overtaken by the Red Bull there of Jeremy Glinner, who of course did very well last two races out, has won those last two races in fact, with the championship leader alongside them in both of those results. Second place on both of the last two races, so both of them being in Italy. Last time out of course was Imola, and before that it was Monza, the track of course that real Formula 1 is going to this weekend, so that will be good fun, I'm sure, and we will get to enjoy that when it comes. As Jeremy now starts their first flying lap, we can talk you through their positioning in the standings. Currently, they are in 5th place, having basically been a total non-scorer this season, right up until that round 2 rounds ago in Monza. And then first time they score points, they win. And then the second time they score points, they win. With pole position on both of those occasions as well. So it's finally been reward for Jeremy in terms of their pace, because they have been showing it all season long. They've had some bad luck. They've had one did not start, one DNF. The other results have all been non-point scoring finishes. So it's been a good revival for them at this later stage of the season. And if they're able to continue on the way that they're going, then top 3, maybe even top 2 in the championship, not beyond the realms of possibility, provided of course you start to see some mistakes from those further up the order. In front of them is Jerry Van Bussel, Dimitri Minic, Vincent Nyquist, and then at the top of the standings, as I say, is Fionn McKee. As now into the final turn they come, then up towards the line. What is Jeremy going to pump in as a first time? A 107.3. So that's not a bad effort at all. Fionn comes up to the line next, and they post a time just a fraction slower, 107.4. So there we are then. We're starting to get some more times in as well for likes of Sandra Van Sand and Rookie as well. And so that's going to fill up nicely. Vincent Nyquist puts in a time also 107.3, but crucially, it's about 300 seconds slower than what Jeremy's been able to manage there. Alex, what do you reckon in these first few laps then that we're seeing now? We're getting 107s, low 107s from those guys at the front. Are we going to be looking at potentially 106s, do you reckon?
I mean, there is always time to improve. With the cars being a little bit slower than last year, I would expect to stay in the 107s, but I mean we've seen it all. I'm sure if you get that if you get that lap that's just right, we can maybe see some high 106s.
Who knows? Who knows? We'll wait and see. Of course, these new cars do have a certain benefit to their side in the first and third sectors on this lap, because, of course, unlike last year's cars, they carry a lot less drag for the downforce that they are producing. So, therefore, in the straights, they actually have been on most of the circuits this year, both in the virtual world and in the real world, being faster in a straight line. So, things are looking pretty good as far as those cars are concerned. Their timings, it's all going to be about that second sector where everything slows right down, you go to much slower speeds, and everybody then starts to have to really hook up their lap properly in that second sector. This, of course, fan favourite circuit, I think it's more than fair to say, was, of course, the finale of the 2012 Formula 1 season all those years ago. One of the seasons which today Fernando Alonso has claimed is one of his best in Formula 1, alongside this season. Unless you count, of course, him saying that last year was his best year in Formula 1, or that 2018 was his best year in Formula 1, or that 2017 was his best year in Formula 1, and on it goes. Fernando is a wily political creature. He's going to always say that he's performing at his best at the current time. But as it is then, in Brazil. Unfortunately, we're taking part in this race just a little bit too soon for the special super duper Ferrari livery that is emblazoned on the engine covers of the Maranello cars. With all the yellow adornments and so on, but don't worry, I'm sure that when that does come along, you'll get to see a few races here in PSGL to show that off. A bit like how we saw, of course, the white Red Bull in last year's game.
Yeah, the one-off livery is obviously a favourite for a lot of the people who play this game, so it's always nice when they incorporate them into a game. Obviously, we're not going to be here next week, but the week after that is going to be. It's gonna be fun to watch, I think, with the livery. I do quite like it, and I think it's a really nice thing that they've done for Monza. Just watching the Mercedes here, Memento invalidated first lap there. Not the best start to this session, but obviously there's still 12 minutes and a lot of time for improvement. All of that.
Absolutely.
Oh no, sorry.
No, don't apologise. Don't apologise at all. So, in terms of what we're seeing then right now, in terms of drivers going on out laps, it's majority the cars that have already set lap times. So we've got Frank Morowaik currently out on their out lap as well. They've not set a time. Mattia Di Campo currently on a timed lap. So too is Memento in the Mercedes. Of those cars, Memento has, of course, invalidated on that previous lap, so they were not able to get anything put together. But of those two cars that are out on circuit at the moment that are setting lap times for the first time, they are currently the one furthest along on that lap by much. Mattia Di Campo has just set a purple first sector so far, so an awful lot of pace in that Haas car at the moment. Meanwhile, in the Mercedes, they are currently sliding their way around this second sector, up now towards Bico to Pato. And round this long right-hander we go. Well, short right-hander really, but takes a long time because of how slow the corner is. Then through the big, fast left-hander down towards Junsao. Last proper corner here on the circuit before we then power up the hill and up towards the start-finish straight and the start line, of course, where we'll see just how well this Mercedes has been able to fare out. This time, unless they managed to invalidate in the last corner, no, instead they go straight into the pits, so nothing for them. But if we go to the Haas then of Mattia Di Campo, currently at the back of the order with no time set, across the line they come, and it's P6 from the Haas driver. Not a bad effort at all as a first opening salvo, though with 10.5 minutes left to go in this session, they need to go out there with a few more sets of tyres and set a few more lap times, I think it's fair to say, as Jeremy improves their time at the top of the timing sheets, 107.2 dead. So that's going to take some beating then from likes of the two McLaren drivers behind, who are of course leading this Drivers' Championship and therefore the Constructors' Championship as well. It's very much been a dominant display by them. And Vincent Nyquist now coming up towards the line. And how are they going to fare in terms of the timing sheets here? Well, they do improve, but it's only by about 1/100th of a second or so. 107.355 there from the McLaren. So not nearly as much of an improvement as we saw in the Red Bull, as Alex Berry slots their Alpine up into P3. So that's not a bad effort at all from them either. And across the line comes Frank. They have set their first time of the day. It's 7.6. So that's not a bad effort at all from them either. Things very close then between the drivers here, as you may well expect, as Norby slots into P4 there in the Ferrari. But yeah, as you'd expect really from a division that is so close together in terms of their overall pace. And then, of course, also such a short lap. It's not like, say, Spa, where you tend to see gaps of 2 or 3 tenths between each driver. No, around this very, very short circuit, gaps of hundreds or even thousands and more the order of the day. So that makes, in my opinion, Jeremy's time even more impressive. Now, big spin there, and that's down at P16. Dimitri Minic, they have come a cropper in the Alfa Romeo, off to one side on the inside of the corner there in the second sector. They're now potentially in the way of the Mercedes here. They're going to need to dive out the way, and they do so. So the Mercedes is unimpeded there. That is the Mercedes of Memento, who carries on. And they are currently on their out lap. Let's stick with them just a little bit longer here because they're about to get around that final corner then and start their flying lap, which hopefully this time they will not invalidate. And we can see just how that Mercedes is going to fare. Their teammate Maceo has been able to set a time, but it's a 108.0, so nowhere near what they would be hoping for, nor I imagine what they're capable of. So around the final corner then comes Memento. Onto the start-finish straight, and they begin their laps. So down into turn number 1 we go then. Through the Senna S's, we say here, through turns 1, 2, and 3. Kept it all within the white lines and on the black stuff so far. And now on the run down towards the Sena de Lago. And into the left-hander we go then. The Mercedes carrying some good speed through there. No purple first sector, as we've seen for other cars in the field, like Mattia Di Campo earlier on, though. So hopefully they can keep up their minimum speed regardless to this second sector here, and then try and carry as much speed and momentum through here to improve their overall lap time. So a little bit wide on the exit there, to be said, of that right-hander, but then powering back up the hill up towards Bico Tabato now. Wide of the apex there. That's going to lose them some time, as now they start to wrangle on the car, pull it round to the left-hand side. The tyres at this point might be screaming out just a little bit more. They've only got this one proper corner to go before now everything is a slight, gentle left-hand incline all the way up the hill and back towards the start-finish line. So through Juncel, we've gone up towards the start-finish line we come then. And whereabouts will Memento put their Mercedes? It's P10, middle of the pack for the reserve driver. Not bad at all.
No, not bad. You mentioned the tyres screaming out Brazil. The middle sector will kill your tyres. So we'll definitely see some people with the lower tyre pressure setups. So if anyone's got a time trial setup here, they're going to be toast for the race because their tyres are not going to make it. But yeah, such a close gaps we've seen between these drivers as well. It's also interesting to note their run out on their outlaps towards the start-finish straight, as I'll show you here if we're going on the Red Bull. Taking that wide line or taking the inside line. The Red Bull here of Jeremy taking the inside line before going onto the start-finish line even. It's different to those who take the outside line. If the outside line is faster, gaining you those thousandths, when you've got those such small gaps, they could really mean everything. So I think it's interesting to see where drivers feel they're more confident, or you know what they're willing to do.
Absolutely, yes indeed. And Jeremy then, we stick on board with for now, as they head up into that second sector now, into these corners here. And once we get to the end here on the run down towards Junsao, we're going to get some idea then as to how they're doing in terms of their overall lap time versus, of course, their current provisional pole time. Still that 107.2 that they set earlier on, as we see yellow flags then just behind them, so that's not going to affect them at all. Now, on this run down towards the end of the second sector, what's it going to be as they come across the split? It's 1/100th of a second slower than what they've been able to manage so far. So it's all going to be about what they can do on the run up the hill here, though with them sawing at the wheel like that, I suspect it may be a slower lap, and they've lifted off and abandoned that one. So we're not going to see any improvement at all from Jeremy this time. Into the pits then, brand new set of boots, and away we'll go in another lap or two's time. One driver currently on a time lap at the moment, though, and basically on a par with their fastest time so far is Alex Berry. They have just come across the sector split between sectors 2 and 3, just 0.02 of a second slower than what they were able to manage previously. Now up towards the start-finish line we come then in the Alpine. They've got their... Oh, there's a flying bit of bodywork I can see there on the circuit, and they go straight into the pits, so they are going to tease us and everything. Norby then is the driver who's next on a lap, but they, I suspect, are going to pull in as well, and if they come across the line, it's not going to be an improvement because they have crossed the split time there and are 4/10 down on their overall best time. So having a look throughout the rest of the field, Mattia Di Campo is the next driver who's going to be coming across the line at any decent speed here and high up the order. We've got them coming down now, and I say all that, they are also pulling into the pits as well. So there we are then. I know nothing, as it turns out. Kinty's crossed the line, improved their position up to 14th, but Dimitri Minic now is finally on a lap here, where we may well get a good lap time from them. Now, they're currently third in the standings, but things have started to take a bit of tumble for them. They have 33-point gap to the leader, that being Fionn Mackie. They have a 19-point gap to Vincent Nyquist in second place in the championship overall as they come through the second sector, keeping everything very tight there. Bit of oversteer as they come into the braking zone for the right-hander, and now we come into this much slower part of the circuit, and this is where that car control that they have become quite well known for is going to need to come in. Now, Dimitri has never really been our absolute best qualifier. It's another big oversteering moment we could see there, but when they have been able to hook it up properly, it has resulted in a pole position for them earlier on this season in the second round back in Miami. So this is potentially going to be a good lap time from them. We'll wait and see, but I have a suspicion, into the pits they come as well.
1.4 seconds down there at the end of sector 2. 3.5 minutes to go. It'll be fine to come in and take a lap. Obviously a very short lap, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. And we will see the wave of the drivers coming out for their final qualifying laps now. We'll see if Vincent can gain that 1.5 tenths he need. I mean, if Jeremy improves even more, it's going to be even more difficult. So, all that yet to come.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Now, in terms of those drivers heading out, we've got one Mercedes already starting to head out. I'm just going to double check which one that is. It is... well, I can't check because the pit lane just gives you the exact same camera angle. Now they're coming out. It is Memento. There we go. So they're exiting the pit lane now. Just ahead of them is one of the Williams cars as well, that being of... ooh, crikey, which one is it? That's Joris. Joris in the Williams there. And they are currently back of the field, 107.9. But again, this is just... an indication of just how competitive it is here in PCF5, because everybody is within, from pole to last, around about sort of 0.8 of a second of one another. That's absolutely astounding. Now, we do have equal cars, but of course these cars have their own quibbles and differences. You know, you can make the cars as equal as you like, but if the cars have different wheelbases, which they do, then of course that is going to create some difference in handling characteristics, as we saw in last year's game and in the games prior, and then of course in this year's game as well. So, Joris then comes round Bico de Pato, and we'll head now round towards Junsao, the corner made famous, of course, by that last lap lunge in 2008 from a certain Mr. Lewis Hamilton, who, of course, came round this final corner here, overtook Timo Glock, ran up to the line and took their first of a current 7 World Championships. Taking a very wide line here is Joris then to get as much speed as possible when crossing the start-finish line, and they begin their lap. So into the first corner, into the center S as they come then, hitting that apex nicely without taking too much curb, and then through turns 2 and 3 they come. It looks like it's reasonably quick so far, down towards the Sina de Lago will come now. And up towards that timing split they come. They are 1/10 up on their personal best through the first sector. It's not a purple first sector, but it's a good bit of improvement so far. That would get them off of last place, and if they're able to repeat that feat in terms of the level of improvement, then over the course of the lap they may well see themselves up in sort of 14th position. But, of course, for their sake, we're hoping that they get much more time out of their lap than that. So, through the second sector they come then, through the great big long left-hander before we come up to then Bica Tapato once more. And around the right-hander they come then, not using as much of the exit space there on the left-hand side of the circuit as other drivers have. If you can get the car hooked up through there, then it's a good sign of a well-balanced car and getting a lot of speed. Through the second sector split, they've come 3/10 up on their personal best. So now, as they head up towards the line, is there going to be another 10th in it for them? Are they going to be able to improve 4, maybe even 5/10 on the way up to the line here? Up they come! And it's P13, a 1.7.6, and that's a very good job there from Joris, improving near enough 4/10 there, because they were a 9 and pretty much a 108 time there. It was so close from the 107.9, so very good indeed. Heard a groan from you there, Alex.
Sorry.
What have you been seeing?
Vincent just crossing the line, 4/1000 of Jeremy's provisional pole time. He was so close to getting that position, but I don't think he's going to have another chance to go a lap. Theo McKee, Vincent's teammate, just crossing the line, staying P6. Jeremy is on a lap, already 0.5 up through the first sector. So how much those 4/1000 are really going to mean, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I'm sure he'll be disappointed if it does stay like this. Alex Berry crossing the line, finishing P3, and Rookie going up into P4 provisionally. Obviously, there is still those on their lap.
Absolutely, and look at this then. So Mattia De Campo jumps up to P5. That's a very good effort from the Haas driver. Sandro not able to get themselves off the back row, not being able to improve on their earlier time there. So that's a shame for them. Kinsey will join them on the back row. And then we've got Joris in the pits then down in P16 now. The majority of drivers have set their times. They won't be going any lower than that, as Alexander Johansson in the AlphaTauri, we've not really talked about them. They're coming up towards the line now. We're seeing at the moment Jeremy on screen. Will Jeremy improve their overall time? Yes, they do. That's a commanding lead from Jeremy there. 107.123. Very good time. And Alexander Johansson, P4 for the AlphaTauri driver. That lap has come out of nowhere and on tyres that had already done one fast lap as well. They are 2 laps old. That's a very, very good effort from them. And now then, I believe that is everybody apart from Joe Van Bussel. And Jerry is getting out the way of fast-moving cars. But that means then that is your qualifying order. Jerry will not improve. And equally, they'll not be displaced by anybody else. So Jeremy Glinner takes a 3rd consecutive pole position here in PCF5. Vincent Nyquist will line up alongside them on their return after not taking part last week in Miller. And then Alex Berry will be 3rd of the drivers to start, with Alexander Johansson starting in P4. We'll get the rest of those results to you in just a moment's time. Once we get that on screen, and there it is there. So we have Alex Berry, Alexander Johansson, so the two Alexes starting side by side on row 2. And then from 5th down, we have Norby, Mattia Di Campo, rookie, JXN 248. That's just going to be JXN for the rest of this stream. Fionn McKee, the championship leader, having an absolutely terrible qualifying in the end there. P9 for them. Franek in P10, then Maceo, Dimitri Minic, Jerry Van Bussel, Roman, Momentu, Joris, Kinty, and Sandro Van Sand rounding out the order. So, there we are then. That has been qualifying here in PCF5 for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Now, if any of the last races are anything to go by, we will be going straight into the race here. No time for a formation lap at all, as whilst I do believe broadcast formation laps do work now, in terms of allowing drivers to take part with warmed tyres or tyres with the same temperature and all these things, all these various glitches that the game originally launched with. I believe that that sort of formation lap works now, but certainly since the fixes have been implemented, we've not been using it here in PCF5. So we may be going straight onto the grid for those 5 red lights. In 3 words, Alex, then what's your prediction for this race? 3 words.
3 words. Lots of chaos. Brazil known
lots
for
of chaos.
I'm looking forward to it.
I like it. I was very tempted to take your first 3 words, which were 3 words, and that would have been an interesting prediction for the race. But there we go. So lots of chaos. That's a prediction from my co-commentator this evening. For me, well, let's think about that. Battle at front. There we go. That's my prediction. I think that the last time that we really had a significant fight at the front was maybe a few rounds ago. All the way back in the Belgian Grand Prix, when we had, of course, Fionn, Vincent, and Dimitri, the top 3 in the championship, finishing top 3 in that race as well. As here we go, we've got those 3, 4, 5 red lights. Lights out, and it's go, go, go. And it seems a very good start for Vincent Nyquist. No, in the second phase, they lose out on the acceleration there. That means that Jeremy gets a fantastic getaway in the end and into the lead in the first corner there. And Alexander Johansson, a major threat from Norby in the center. So too is rookie Mattia Di Campo. They're fighting hard one. Mattia then into the wall. Mattia Di Campo into the wall. They are ghosted, so hopefully they're not going to cause any problems for anybody else. Sandro Van Sand, their teammate, has gone off and out of this race. Roman is down to the back of the order. We've got Joris back there as well, and managed to actually get a position in all of that. And now we've got Jeremy Glenner at the front still. Vincent Nyquist. We have a virtual safety car, as we've got all 3 sectors in yellow, but no yellow dots exiting the pit lane, so no full safety car this time. So the race neutralized. Now, to give you a quick rundown of tyres, because of course we don't get to discuss these on the formation lap because the formation lap didn't happen, but we have the top 5 all on the hard tyre, then rookie taking a gamble on the mediums. Same story from P7 down to P11 in terms of just hard tyres, playing it safe. Then Kinty on the mediums. Kinty's had a fantastic getaway at the start of that race from P17 up to P12 in the Ferrari, and Roman, the only other runner on the medium tyres, Sandro Van Sand, out of this race, was also on the medium tyre. Now they're streaking down towards the start-finish line very quickly indeed, but I assure you we're still under virtual safety car conditions. And, well, how does that feel then, Alex, as far as your lots of chaos prediction is concerned?
I think that was quite
accurate. As we get back to green flag racing.
Green flag racing, yeah. Jeremy with a great start there. Initially I did think Vincent got him, but not quite, but he does look like he's ready to pounce coming through the back straight. Now remaining in second, of course. Yeah, not sure what happened with the Haas there. I know one of them I think made a little bit of contact, but I honestly couldn't tell you for the life of me which one was which. But very unfortunate for the team there. Yeah, getting back underway now.
Absolutely getting back underway indeed. And the fight then is everywhere, really, to be honest. I was talking about fight up front before the race got started, but as you can quite clearly see, with that VSC, we've now got a whole snake of cars moving around the Interlagos circuit. And as we come round Junstau and up towards this run now towards the start-finish line once more. It is Jeremy Glinner, Vincent Nyquist, Alex Berry, Alexander Johansson, Norby, then Fionn getting past Rookie on the run up the hill, and that's significant because Rookie, of course, has those medium tyres. They should be gaining positions, not losing them at this early stage in the Grand Prix. Certainly not to a hard tyre runner like Fionn, but Fionn, of course, championship leader. They have got themselves a rather good bit of pedigree and a good bit of speed underneath their right foot. So, whilst they may not have been able to show it in qualifying, it's certainly working out for them well this time. Ferrari spun the back of the field. That's Kinty. Kinty, after the fantastic start, avoiding all the carnage, getting up into P12, has now ended up dropping it on the exit of turn number 3. And that means then that they are now back down to P16. Now, luckily for them, they are still relatively close, only 2.6 seconds off the back of the group of cars in front of them. But there's already starting to be 2 groups forming now. P12 down to P15. And then everybody from P11 up is all in one great big snake. Now, in terms of this battle that we're seeing then, Fionn and Rookie still going at it, but Norby now under threat from the McLaren driver as well. And meanwhile, up towards the front of the field, we've got Jeremy and Vincent still taking pot shots at one another, but very close in behind, waiting just to take advantage in case anything goes wrong in that fight up ahead, are the 2 Alexes, Alex Berry and Alexander Johansson. The pair of them got their DRS open. This might even be a move here for the AlphaTauri driver. To the inside, down into turn number 1 we go. And Alexander Johansson, with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far, slots up the inside. And oh, that's Alex Berry off the circuit. They have massively fallen back there. Massively fallen back in wheel-to-wheel combat, and that is not something that we often see happening with Alex Berry. Usually, very clean racer, doesn't really get into many difficulties or troubles at all, and then in that instance there, they're now down all the way to P15, and this is the struggle, isn't it, Alex? In terms of if you start seeing a driver, having an incident when the field is so closely packed together.
Yeah, you lose so much track position, and if you're in that second group, when you're out of DRS, it's going to be so difficult to get back. Yeah, I don't think there's any contact. I think that was just a small mistake, which is very unfortunate, as that's very costly error, but slotting into P14, I'm sure we'll see him come back definitely at least into the points.
We would certainly hope, because Alex is one of those very quick drivers. To give you a quick rundown on some of their results, it may not on paper seem like they've been that quick over the course of this season, not having stood on the podium on any occasion, but believe me, their qualifying and race performances have been very impressive. It's just so often it seems to be that there's a little bit of bad luck, whether that be in the form of safety cars or virtual safety cars coming at the wrong time, the weather changing in the wrong way for them, or, as we've seen here today, a bit of poor luck in combat. So there we are. Up at the front of the field, Vincent Nyquist still trying their absolute damnedest to get onto the back of Jeremy Glinner. It's not really working out for them so far. They've been able to get close, but not really into any position where they could go side by side or try the move. Meanwhile, lurking in the wings behind them is Alexander Johansson, still in 3rd place here, and they have started to actually gap Norby behind in the Ferrari. Now, if that happens to Norby, they are going to be at massive threat from the chasing pack behind. Now, here around Brazil, as we've been seeing all race long, it is a bit of a DRS train. So if you start to lose DRS from the car in front of you, that can cause all sorts of problems for you later on. And if the car behind you has DRS, then of course it's just going to mean that you will drive one eye looking in your mirrors. And that is not a particularly stress-free environment when you are racing. So there we are then. As I have a small brain fart, we carry on. Now, in terms of what we can see in terms of these battles here, well, currently those top 3 still very close together, and Norby has been able to stay within that DRS window to Alexander Johansson in front, but as they get the DRS open, you can see there how this DRS train doesn't really give you much benefit. It only means that you can lose time if you don't have it, because down that entire run there on Reto Aposta, it was nothing at all to be gained for Norby there, not for a couple of hundredths of a second. So either a high downforce setup on that car, or just DRS being that underpowered in a train. Meanwhile, just behind them, we've got Fionn McKee and then Rookie close behind. So Rookie is getting very close, in fact, to the back of that McLaren. Those medium tyres, of course, should be giving them that extra pace. And so now, if they can get things right here on the exit of Junsao, we may even see them be able to drive all the way up the hill and get themselves into a decent position. They are using a bit of overtake here. We've got another spin towards the back. That's JXN. Oh dear, that's a shame for them. But further up the front here, this is where the fight is between Fionn, Norby, and Rookie. Rookie initially got the run on Fionn, rather, down in towards turn number 1. But it's all towards the end of that start-finish straight, starting to go wrong for them. But now, look at this, good exit for the Aston Martin. They are closing in on the back of the McLaren, but the McLaren gets the DRS open, and that just protects them, keeps them safe here. And now into the corner we go. They're practically getting pushed through the corner by the Aston. Is that McLaren? And that's just some indicator as to just how much grip Rookie has underneath them here, but they're not really able to extract it and make good use of it.
Yeah, dirty air in the middle sector, not going to help you until the end of the lap. Obviously with the DRS, not really able to gain too much either, so it's such a challenge overtaking here when you're in a train. So he's just got to really try and perfect his middle sector, get as close as he can. So those first and second straights will be as optimal with the slipstream as you can get. But yeah, it's so difficult to overtake, but we'll see what he can do this time round. Looks a little bit more further back. Fionn though, trying to touching the Ferrari. They're going down the inside. I don't know if he's going to have the pace. Is he going to send it with the lunge? Yes, he will. He tries to keep it. Does have to back out. Not quite able to make the move yet.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ferrari there and completely entitled to take the racing line. The McLaren was not properly alongside them at all. But it was just a touch-and-go moment there for them as they essentially had the Ferrari swiping across their front wing there. It was a tense moment here in the commentary box. I'm not sure how that must have felt for the driver on the circuit, but there we are then. Fionn taking a very aggressive line through these couple of right-handers here, using as much curb as they possibly can to try and get on terms of the Ferrari, but it's not really working with them. But clearly, lots of pace in that McLaren. Meanwhile, further down the order, we've got Dimitri Minic here in a fairly good position relative to the driver in front, that being Franek, because Franek has not just gone wide at the apex of Bika Tata, but has also got over a second's gap to Jerry Van Bussel in front. So now it's going to be a question then of how well Dimitri can exit Junsao here. Big oversteer moment for Franek, and this means this move is going to be done even before they get to the DRS zone. Dimitri Minic goes round the outside and will have DRS, whereas their opponent behind will not, as they head down towards the Senna S, and then, of course, it'll be opportunity for a counter-attack down the Reta Posta and into Sina Del Lago, but I doubt very much that Franek's going to be in position to be able to take real advantage and send one up the inside like that.
Yeah, it's just those costly errors again that you'll see when those tyres are really hot out of the middle sector. Oversteer moments like that are so difficult to avoid. But yeah, he's going to stay in the DRS. He will have an opportunity to get that position back this time round. Yeah, further at the front, it does look like Norby is struggling to keep up with the top three in the middle sector. He's obviously still in the DRS for now, but the gap was, what, 8/10 there, so maybe an indication a little bit of struggle as there's the Mercedes spelling, that's Masio, spun in the same place last lap, so yeah, very unfortunate for them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a shame. Obviously, these drivers do put in varying amounts of practice, but I'm sure we've all been there as sim racers ourselves, more than just commentators. You know, you've practiced for something and then it all goes horribly wrong very early on, and it's a very demoralising moment. But the hope is, of course, that you can pick yourself up, recover, and get a good result from it regardless. So, hopefully, that's what Maceo will be able to do. But now, as we head down the Reta Posta, watching this fight here then between Norby and then, of course, Fionn and Rookie behind. Rookie has a big mistake on the exit of the Sina Del Lago, and that means they have massively fallen back then versus Fionn ahead. Now, crucially for them, they're still within a second, and they've still got those medium tyres. Those mediums seem to still be working well at lap 10 here of 36, and therefore there's enough pace for them to be able to keep on cracking on and get back onto the back of that McLaren. But at some point, the Aston's going to need to pit. And when it does, it's going to come out in probably clean air. If not, then certainly versus cars with much older tyres than it. So it should be able to overtake relatively quickly in the hands of
the lead. Vincent getting a much better exit than Jeremy there, taking the lead. Also, I think is going to have oh, sorry, no, my bad. Jeremy does have the DRS. Going to be fighting towards turn 1 here.
Absolutely, yeah, look at this then. So side by side into turn one, the McLaren went defensive to the inside, but it hasn't worked out for them. Jeremy is able to retake the lead here in the Brazilian Grand Prix, but now they're going to have all the defense to do down into Cena de Lago. It's like Max Verstappen leading the charge once again, although this time instead of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, it's Vincent Nyquist in the McLaren who goes up the inside and is able to take the position, retake the lead once more. And now as they head back up the hill, it is the fight on at the front that we were oh so hoping for in this race. Vincent taking a different line there in the right-handers versus what Jeremy behind is doing. Jeremy taking a much tighter line through those corners, trying to use as little distance as possible, whereas Vincent arguably getting the more smooth line and therefore able to keep on the power more. So through Bica to Basso they go then, and down towards Junsao. This exit is all important here in terms of this fight back and whether or not there's going to be anything that happens between these two drivers. Now, in terms of their ERS levels, they're relatively level with one another, only a difference of around about 5 to 10% or so between the pair. But now, with DRS open on the Red Bull, with its sister team AlphaTauri just behind as well, they're going to get closer and closer here and probably just sticking behind through the Senna-S. And then hopefully, if we're going to get some entertainment at least here at the front, it's going to be opened up once more on the Retta Aposta and down towards Cena de Lago. And maybe even a move happen as a result. But I don't think it's going to be just a bit too far back on the Red Bull's part. They need to be ideally around about 3, maybe 3.5 tenths going through the exit of the Senna-S's. And they were about 4.5, maybe even half a second away. So really not what we want to see in terms of a battle, but Vincent Nyquist then has been able to get the position on track. Now, the other thing we have to consider, of course, is these guys are on hard tyres. The hards are probably going to go quite some distance into this race. Still be competitive as Roman gets a position on Frank further back down the order. The Aston Martin overtaking the Red Bull, but focusing again back at the front in this conversation about strategy. Now, is the undercut powerful around here? Yes, it can be. In terms of the use of the soft tyre, well, that might be something that the drivers would seek to do if they can go long enough in this race, and if they're maybe anticipating a safety car to come out, especially if it's a whole gaggle of cars going into the pits, all getting fresh tyres at the same time, trying to go for moves, and then the chaos ensues as a result. So, any early stoppers going on to the mediums will likely end up getting track position in terms of an undercut, but if you're able to stick it out and get onto the softs later on, you may well then have the pace to come back through and get an overtake done, as Franek gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings.
Yeah, not what you want here, especially this early on. Barely a third into the race, so yeah, it's maybe not the best sign of things to come, but it's not the end of the world. There will be other drivers getting penalties. Jeremy, I think, is starting to struggle a little bit, falling back. If you saw, the gap was about 5 tenths in the first sector, staying like that. He's maintaining it at the moment, but if this carries on, he could be looking at falling out the DRS soon, which is really not what you want. You know, with DRS trains being so powerful, you can see how much more pace Vincent has there, getting a whole tenth in that, like couple of corners. Obviously, Jeremy will put it back here, but if that's a sign of things to come, Jeremy maybe needs to look at something different. But, yeah, no, not the end of the world at the moment.
No, absolutely not the end of the world. I tell you what, though, one driver who has been impressing me through the middle sector in particular is Fionn McKee, the championship leader. They, at some point, whilst we've been focusing on the fight between the top two, has been able to get by Norby up into P4 now, and through the second sector, my suspicion is they have a higher downforce setup than the cars around them, because on the straights here, use of DRS is keeping them in touch, but then through the second sector in particular, they're just able to hit the apexes and carry so much more minimum speed through the corners, certainly than Alexander Johansson ahead of them. So it's been a very impressive drive from them. Look again here through this second sector then, so it's about 6 tenths as we enter the tight and twisty bit. But I would wager then that, well, I say that, it rises up to 7 tenths, but now, as you can see then, back down to 6 tenths, now about 5 tenths. They're able to just turn the car in that much easier as well, down to into the 4 tenths as well. Acceleration zone, that comes back out to over 5 tenths, but yeah, as you can see, that's where Fionn is gaining the majority of their time. So Fionn in particular then should be taking a think about using the undercut, because if they're able to get some clean air, get some good laps pumped in whilst others are still running around at the front, then that could be their one and only option to getting onto the podium, maybe even getting the race win.
Yep. Yeah, those higher downforce setups in the middle sector obviously be so much more powerful and quite strategic thinking if that's what he's done. If he knows he can stay in the DRS train. Um, but yeah, if he undercuts, obviously he'll get a bit more pace on the tires. But I mean, if he's relying on that DRS train, whether it's the smartest thing to do, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the other thing as well that I just want to come back to a point you made a little bit earlier on about Jeremy and their seemingly their struggles versus Vincent Nyquist up in front. The thing which, of course, we mustn't forget is that until just a couple of laps ago, Jeremy was leading this race for the entire distance and therefore didn't really have all that much experience of driving in the dirty air, which, whilst reduced this year, of course, because of the design of the new cars, is not completely eradicated. Certainly, that's never going to be possible as long as Formula One cars race in atmosphere. And then if they don't, well, there's no point for aerodynamic devices on them at all. So, in terms of what we're seeing here then, for Jeremy, it's a learning curve, really. It's trying to figure out how best to follow the car in front and keep that speed up. And do so whilst losing as little time as possible themselves. Now, I say all that, but they are now under threat from Alexander Johansson behind. They have been able to, well, I say that, but then down the straight, because there's no DRS advantage to be gained by Johansson, it then means that they basically stay the same distance back. But certainly through the centre S's, the gap was all the way down to about 1.5 tenths of a second there between the two cars. And so, therefore, I feel that Alexander Johansson, again, either through setup or just through running in the train and not at the head of the train for all race long, just has that bit more experience of driving in the dirty air, being able to control the car more, versus in that clean air driving that Jeremy will have been used to at this point.
Yep, F1, all about confidence. So if he's had all that more practice, he's going to be so much more confident in the corners. I'm sure Jeremy will adapt quickly, but I mean, this is a perfect time to pounce for Alexander Johansson now. Turning on the overtake, not going to be able to close that feeling at the moment, but if you look at the batteries as well, Alexander Johansson maybe also having to use quite a bit more to stay with these guys. He's only got half the battery, so I mean, if he's using that, if he's going to burn through it, he might not be able to stay in there for long, but yeah, should be something to manage for him.
Absolutely, yeah. We're seeing a little bit of pit activity now. Some of those medium tyre runners from the start of this race going in for hards, and then Alex Berry going in for a set of mediums. So either committing to a two-stop strategy there for Alex, or thinking that the mediums could go all the way to the end from here. That's a big ask for those tyres. 19 laps on a set of mediums. I think that's going to be tricky, but there we are. So down. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying the tyres. We do have medium runners still out, 16, 17 lap old. It will be a stretch. They will be horrible towards the end, but if he can make some good speed now, obviously with the spin he had earlier on, it could be a really good opportunity for him to make up some crucial positions.
Absolutely, yeah. I think in terms of those medium tyre runners, I think it's perhaps the best example before they dive into the pits here is Roman. They have gone into the pits now, but certainly when they were following Franek in front of them, obviously they and Franek had a few laps of battling one another, going back and forth between the two, and ultimately what we've ended up seeing there on that final lap, on their in lap, is that they were losing time hand over fist, just absolutely falling away from the back of the Red Bull. So definitely around about this time is when those tyres are losing their grip. And losing their performance as well in terms of their delta. There's a DNF from JXN. I literally just swapped to them, saw that they were chasing after Dimitri, switched to Dimitri, and then they went to DNF. So something big has happened there for the Alpine driver. I think that must have been yeah. So based on where their dot was, they've lost it on the exit on the outside of the turn number 3 there, the final part of the Senna S. So that's a great big shame for them. They're not able to continue anymore, but yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Roman then is an interesting one. I think they are a driver who we want to maybe just keep an eye on. Maybe not necessarily be watching the whole time, but definitely keep an eye on them for the next few laps here, because they are on fresh hard tyres. We know that they're quick because, of course, they won the Japanese Grand Prix 3 rounds ago. But we're going to need to just wait and see then how these hard tyres switch on versus the others around them, and then, of course, how they're going to be able to put that pace to good advantage. Same can also be said for Alex Berry and Rookie ahead of them on tyres that are 1 lap older in terms of their lifespan. And then, of course, for the case of Alex Berry, they are on medium, so they will have a pace advantage in theory. Norby coming out of the pits now then in the Ferrari, and they are able to just clear the likes of the Astons and the Alpine behind. So clearly that undercut then, a couple of what we may have necessarily expected. So the undercut clearly very powerful around this Interlagos circuit. As we now just keep an eye on some of the timings that we can see on our screen at the moment, and that being let's have a look here. We've got Fionn still very close to the back of Alexander Johansson, but not able to really gain all that much on the AlphaTauri driver in front. The thing that they do have in hand, though, that they may not necessarily be aware of is, like you mentioned earlier on, Alexander Johansson's loss in... Oh, and that's a big moment for the outcome of this race. 5-second time penalty for Jeremy Glinner. And so that means they will have to serve that towards the end of this race because they were speeding into the pit lane. So they are going to have that added to their race time at the end. And given the DRS train nature of this circuit, I think that is curtains for their opportunity to win this race, or maybe even get onto the podium in the end here, as Vince Nyquist comes out just ahead of them on the medium tyre as well. And at this stage in the race then, lower fuel, more rubber on the circuit. I think there's definitely some possibility here that these tyres can get to the end, but it may be a bit closer than what they will have been hoping for. But certainly, yep, they are into the pits, so that means that Alexander Johansson and Fionn McKee continue to race around together at the front, and we'll wait and see then as to how they shape out versus their teammates. Now, one thing that has massively changed between these two drivers after their pit stops is the ERS levels. We take a look at Vincent Nyquist. They are 95% of their battery available, whereas for Jeremy, they have been able to use 25% of that on this outlap alone. Now, I think that has maybe been a bit of a mistake on their part, as with the cold tyres, it's not really going to give them much benefit at all. Alexander Johansson now gets a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
That's the top 3 drivers provisionally now with 5-second penalties.
Oh, you're right, yes, Vincent Nyquist has a 5-second as well.
Yeah,
Mikey jinx. So, all of a sudden,
typical
things are looking very good for Fionn McKee.
Yeah, you just mentioned struggling qualifying. You mentioned struggled in qualifying. Things looking up for him now. If he can just stay in this DRS train, keep it calm, keep it cool, he could be looking at a win.
Certainly could. Not for the first time this season as they exit the pits, and confirmation there on your screens on the timing tower. No time penalty for Fionn McKee. Now, they do have a bit of a job to do because they are now up against Norby behind them. They've been on similar pace throughout this race. Fionn does not currently have DRS relative to Alexander Johansson in front of them. They need to close in by another couple of attempts over the course of this lap. On cold tyres, of course, Alexander has cold tyres as well. So there's not... So it's not going to be a massively difficult task to be able to do that because they're essentially at the same phase of their race as one another. But it's, yeah, they need to make sure they get within that DRS before they come round Junsao and up the hill here, because otherwise they're going to be a sitting duck for Norby behind, who is, of course, on fresh tyres still. Not as fresh as the McLaren, of course, but fresh enough and, crucially, up to temperature. And as they come over the rise now, it looks like, yes, Fionn has been able to get that DRS. So that means they are protected in the meantime, as their teammate Vincent Nyquist sets a 109.1 as the new fastest lap of this race. So, top 3 drivers, as you rightly point out there, Alex, have now all got 5-second time penalties.
Oh, and Jeremy got an extra 3.
Oh dear.
Oh. Although also important to note, Alexander Johansson has dropped out of the DRS currently. Fionn also borderline, as we did already. So what, Rookie gets a 5-second time penalty? Why is that happening? Are the brake markers not big enough?
I suspect that it may well be drivers who, you know, you obviously in PSGL you have very limited assists. I'm not off the top of my head. I must confess I do not know which assists are and are not enabled here in PCF 5. I know that's bad of me, but in terms of what we know, that drivers tend to bomb into the Brazil pit lane as quickly as they possibly can, and then of course if you've got the pit assist on, then that means you just gain all the time in the world as you then get auto braked by the game. Now, whether drivers have then gone into the pits thinking that that's been the case, I don't know. If drivers have maybe gone into the pits thinking that if they have the racing line, for instance, if that's allowed in this particular tier, then if that's something that they've been following and it's given them an instruction, brake at this point, sometimes the pits safety car, the pit lane racing line can be incorrect in terms of when it tells you to brake, so that can then end up meaning you come cropper as a result. Could all just be the change in track conditions, maybe something they've not practiced. Shame for those drivers who have come a cropper, but that's then everything to gain for the likes of Fionn Norby and Jerry Van Bussel, who of course is 10 seconds back from the leader at the moment. So they, if they can improve in clean air with no major threat behind, Frank is reasonably close, but I reckon a good couple of strong corners here from Jerry could potentially shake that DRS toe. And, well, yeah, we end up maybe seeing something happening for them there. Rookie is currently sat still on the circuit. Oh, no, that's them in the pit lane, I should say. So they're getting a new front wing and a set of hard tyres on that Aston Martin. And they're not going anywhere. And there they go. So there we are. Oh, no, they've retired from this race. Well, there we are. So they've retired in the pit lane, hence why it took so long for their car to set off. But there we are then. So back to the main topic at hand, that being this race and the fights within it. The top four all within a second of one another, so all back in the DRS train. Crucially though, Norby just a little bit too far off at the moment. 1.5 seconds back, 1.6 seconds back now from Fionn McKee. And that's going to be all important later on, because it means then that if they're able to get back into the DRS of Fionn, something very difficult to do given that the field ahead of them are in a DRS train and therefore all going to be getting the benefit of that DRS. But if they're able to do it, if they're able to get in there, that means then that they will be able to benefit where the penalties are applied and therefore be able to get themselves onto the podium. But given that what we know in that these top three drivers are incredibly fast, this may be a fool's errand, as now down the start-finish straight they go then, and losing time all the time because they, as I say, don't have DRS, whereas the cars in front do.
Yep. Such a crucial thing, as you mentioned, staying in the DRS here, so will be a bit of a challenge if he's somehow able to get again. It'll be a miracle. Going back to those time penalties with the speed in the pit lane, obviously that would be too relevant in terms of new people getting them because no more pit stops. But I know the brake boards, the boards with the sponsor boards which are used in Brazil, if they're getting knocked over or something like that, that's going to be horrible for those people trying to tell where they are. So I wonder if there's been any play in that. Not 100% sure, but yeah, Jerry Van Bussel, I've noticed, has been the past few laps at the back of Franek, looking really good. Or did Franek overtake him? I can't remember. But Jerry is looking counts at the back.
Franek has managed to get that position over Jerry at some point. They were separated by about 9/10 of a second or so when we last had a look at them through the second sector. But now at this point, those positions have reversed, and now we're going to see whether Jerry has anything in reply here.
Alexander Hansen getting another 3 seconds
down the start finish straight they go. DRS open, of course no DRS available on the Red Bull in front, and they are gaining, but dear oh dear, driving the car as a result. Now look at this then between Jerry Van Bussel and Franek. It's a massive overspeed for the side goes the Williams, and that is a position gained once again for Jerry Van Bussel up into P6 ahead of Franek Marowayak.
Yep, great move there, crucial move. Whether it's going to last long, not 100% sure. The DRS obviously being very powerful, as I think I've said about 100 times today. DRS is such a big thing here. We'll see if he's able to keep the position, but yeah, really good from him there. That was a nice clean move. I'm sure he'll be happy with that. Jeremy, important to note, dropped out of the DRS from Vincent, so Vincent able to run away here. Only needs 3 seconds on the Red Bull because of the time penalties. But I mean, if he can stretch 1 second to Jeremy, will he be able to stretch 5 seconds to Fionn? It's definitely looking like a possible thing. So if Vincent's still able to win this race for sure.
Absolutely. And we're starting to see then these gaps that are forming between cars, because after this pit stop phase where people come in at different times, therefore have colder tyres, aren't able to keep up with those ahead of them, it means then that because of the DRS trains around this circuit, we start to see things opening up. But in particular, one gap I didn't expect to be opening up is the gap between first and second. Vincent Nyquist has been able to break the DRS on Jeremy Glinner, and that is going to be all crucial for the outcome of this race, because it means then that if Vincent is able to start scampering away at the front, completely unimpeded by any DRS train behind, and unthreatened, I should say, by any DRS train behind, then crucially that means that the chances of them winning this race suddenly skyrocket. Because whilst, yes, they do have to draw out a 5-second gap, which means they would need to do that by at least a half a second a lap at this point, maybe even more, they could potentially do it. It could potentially be on now that they're no longer being threatened by DRS, and the cars behind will instead be swabbling amongst one another for those overtaking rights and for that track position. Now, of course, for Jeremy and Alexander Johansson in second and third right now, they are fighting each other for the same bit of tarmac. Why? Because they both have the same amount of penalties. For Fionn McKee, they're automatically going to get past both of these drivers at the moment, but if things continue as they are and Vincent starts to get further and further away, the gap between himself and Fionn at the moment is 2.1 seconds. And therefore, if it keeps expanding and gets up to over 5 seconds before the end of this race, then that means that Vincent takes the win over Fionn, who would then get second place. So all to play for still. In terms of this fight, is definitely not over. And this is now one of those times where certainly, if Jeremy is losing pace versus Vincent up ahead, then Alexander and Fionn need to make hay and get past him as quickly as possible. But that being said, that is going to be very difficult for Alexander Johansson to do, because as you can see on the back of their AlphaTauri, that red light is flashing. But that's not going to stop them anyway. Up the inside, down towards turn number 1 they go, and past Jeremy Glinner, past the pole sitter, past the man who was able to lead most of this race in the early part. And now, on the run down to Decina del Lago, it's close once again between the pair of them. Now, with no ERS remaining, and no DRS to open up on the back of their car either, Alexander Johansson has just been able to hang on there into Decina del Lago, and now it's all to play for. How are they going to be able to respond to what Vincent Nyquist is doing up ahead? Both drivers very, very low on ERS, so they're not really going to be able to make much use of overtake to close that gap down. But one driver who has got loads of ERS remaining is Fionn McKee. Over 30%, over 40% in fact, available on that McLaren as they head through the second sector. Now, they need to be wary of Jeremy here, because Jeremy has a decent amount of ERS behind them. They're now also going to have the DRS from Alexander in front, so this could end... Oh, big slide! Big slide for Alexander Johansson coming out of Junsao. And now as they make the run up towards the start-finish line, opportunistic move from Fionn McKee. They're trying to make it happen here. They're bump drafting the AlphaTauri in front of them. And now with ERS and DRS, they get past the AlphaTauri into turn number 1. Fantastic bit of opportunistic driving that's ruined by contact. All ruined by contact, and Fionn is round. And that is a massive shame for the McLaren driver who did nothing wrong there.
That was looking so promising. Really able to capitalise on Alexander's mistake. Get past, looking like to have a shot at the win to catch up to Vincent even. But no, denied by contact. That's such a disappointment. I'll tell you what, all that fighting's done. It's halved the gap between that group and Norby. Norby, who's looking to close up a lot more. If he can even catch up to that train, that's going to really stop Vincent being able to make that 5 seconds. So could we be seeing Norby having a go at the win here today?
Well, it's all very close as we have yellow flags in Sector 2. That's Franek Morowiak in the wall. Or, well, not in the wall, rather, but spinning round. They're doing a Kylie Minogue, asking everybody to get out their way. But there we are. So, that is Franek down the order, out of the points. Vincent Nyquist now cruising away at the front of this field. 3.5 seconds, the gap from them back to second place, which is about to change hands as Jeremy Glennon goes up the inside into turn number 1. But crucially, as you say, Norby is close behind. Big oversteer moment for Alexander Johansson through turn 2 there as well. So that means they're not in as advantageous a position as they would like to be on this run down towards Cecina del Lago. And now, as they get down towards that turn number 4, it is as you were between Red Bull and Alpha Tauri. But through all of this fighting, as Franek gets a 5-second time penalty for speeding the pit lane, then retires in said pit lane, it is now then Norby 1.2 seconds back from these leading drivers. And if we switch to the leader graphic on my end, you don't necessarily have to do that on broadcast, but that is a gap of now just 5.1 seconds between Norby and the race leader. So if they can get within another tenth of Vincent Nyquist, not Jeremy, Vincent Nyquist rather, then they are looking at taking their very first win of this season. And that would get them massively up the order. They have been able to get themselves 1 podium so far, that being last time out in Imola. It was a home podium for the Ferrari. And now, as they head down towards the start-finish line, that gap opens up again just a little bit to 5.1, now 5.0 seconds. And it's just there, dipped under 5 seconds. We're now 4.8 seconds for the Ferrari. If they are able to get within DRS of these cars in front, and if they are able to not lose any more time to Vincent Nyquist in front, or if even Norby is able to overtake those cars and start chasing on after Vincent Nyquist, then that means that a Ferrari win is assured with just 4 laps to go.
Yeah, the drama at the end here. Can Norby get this gap? The thing is, even if he does get into the DRS of Alexander Johansson and Jeremy, which I'm sure he will, he's still gonna he's gonna stay within 5 seconds. So if Jeremy's not got the pace, or if Norby has to end up fighting, that could really hurt his chances of a win here. He's got to keep it as clean as possible. All of those second, third, and fourth need to keep it as clean as possible to try and get Norby within the 5 seconds there.
Absolutely, but here now comes the problem. So whilst Norby has now gotten within DRS of these cars in front, they are not really able to make anything happen with the cars in front. They're not able to overtake them, not able to get close to them, because of course by Alexander Johansson having the DRS and Jeremy driving fast enough to keep Alexander at bay, it means then that the Ferrari is just kind of having to sit patiently in the background and wait for a mistake or an increase in the pace. Now, as it is, as they come round into the second sector, 5.07 seconds, the gap between Norby and Vincent Nyquist. If Vincent makes a mistake anywhere, which they're not really prone to do, then that could bring the balance of power back towards the Maranello team. But as it stands, Norby is not winning this race. They need to get within another 2.5 tenths or so, which means that the group in front of them need to get a bit of a shift on.
Yeah, it's absolutely imperative at this point. The gap only growing bigger between Vincent and Norby. Vincent's going to, and he's going to be pushing even more. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much Norby can do. Even if he is able to overtake, he's just going to lose more time. And if you look at the gap between Alexander and Vincent, that's already 4.4. And I expect that will grow to around 5 seconds. So Norby needs to overtake. In all honesty, he's got to overtake, and he's got to charge.
Absolutely, and I think here this is no DRS. Then they've lost the DRS to Alexander Johansson this lap. So that's just going to compound their issues. Now, Jeremy and Alexander seem to now be picking the pace up again. That gap now hovering around 4 seconds for Alexander Johansson, 3.6 for Jeremy Glenner. So if they're able to get their feet down, good England from me there, then they will be able to get nice and close to the leader, which then in turn will allow Norby to close up as well, because there's essentially now this sort of invisible buffer between Norby and their success here, and that buffer is the dirty air, it is the gap, it is the DRS train effect, it is all these things which mean that basically the cars in front are what are going to determine their finishing position here, not necessarily their own driving, because they can drive their hearts out at this point, but if they're not able to close in enough, the cars in front, I should say, then that means that Norby is going to be left out to dry. Now, as it is, Norby once again has not got DRS, so maybe it's at this point Norby's tyres are starting to fail them, and they are losing this all by themselves, which, if that is the case, that'd be a major shame. But in terms of this fight between the cars in front, well, some solace, I suppose, for Fionn McKee, because they are still within 8 seconds of these drivers in front. So they both carry 8 seconds worth of time penalties. Unfortunately for Norby and to a certain degree Fionn, Vincent Nyquist does not carry 8 seconds. They only carry 5. And so therefore, Jeremy and Alexander will drop off of the podium as things stand at the moment. So things still very tense, very close here. Now the Ferrari driver is not really saving up ERS at all, which if they did, then they might be able to then go for one major push lap towards the end of this race. But they've only got now just the 1.5 laps in which to do it, because Vincent Nyquist is now coming round Jun Sao to go up towards the start-finish line to start their final lap of this Brazilian Grand Prix. A race which they looked more than comfortable sitting in second. They decided to go for the gap, go for the win, and it certainly seems to be paying off for them so far. Down in towards turn number 1 they go, and now just 5.7 seconds down the road is Norby. If there was ever a time for them to absolutely use maximum attack mode, it would be now.
Yep, starting the last lap here. He's going to be pushing like mad, as is Vincent. When you're pushing like mad, that's when you see the mistakes, but also Alexander Johansson looking all over the back of Jeremy there, trying to steal the position from him. Obviously, those two are fighting for position, so we'll see what he can do, but there's not too much time to do it. I expect we'll see a drag race to the line. But yeah, lots of excitement here, lots of work for Norby to do.
Absolutely, yeah. This fight between second and third, which will become fourth and fifth, of course, is not over. And these guys are continuing to fight one another here, but I think the winner of this will be Jeremy. They have banked a huge amount of ERS in preparation for this final run up the hill and towards the start-finish line. And now, in what has been a performance worthy of royalty, round up towards the line comes Vincent Nyquist, deploying ERS all the way up to the line. They have done it. They have got the gap they needed and come across the line to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. There is nothing Norby can do to challenge them. They finish second, and Fionn McKee will come up towards the line and finish third, picking up a podium there, but it is a question of what might have been on a day when they were taken out after getting up into second place. And could they have taken home the win in this race? I suspect they may well have been able to do so. Jeremy Glinner then and Alexander Johansson come home 4th and 5th after their time penalties are applied. Jeremy Van Bussel in 6th and Joris behind them to the Williams cars, making a good recovery to take home 2 good points-paying positions. Alex Berry in 8th, Dimitri Minic in 9th, and Memento in 10th, with Mattia De Campo, the last of the finishers, finishing outside the points now. So there you are. That has been your Brazilian Grand Prix. And, well, what do we think of that one then, Alex?
I mean, that was quite tense, to be honest. Especially those last few laps, so it's a shame for Norby. He wasn't quite able to stick with Alexander and Jeremy there, but yeah, a commanding performance from Vincent. He's going to be incredibly happy with how that went.
Very happy indeed. A final gap between the two cars, then 1.2 seconds. So clearly something in the tank there for Vincent, so they could then eke out that extra bit of performance. However, the time penalties for the cars immediately behind them on the circuit there, of course, not being a good thing for their overall championship hopes, because what they would have hoped for would be that Fionn would finish down in P5, but instead they've finished in P3. That means they are going to pick up another 10 points, which means that the overall gap between the pair of them has only come down by 6 points in that round. That means the gap between the two cars, the two leaders in this championship, will now be 8 points in total. So things still very much to play for on this run-in towards the championship here, and it's been another good race here in PCL 5. To give you that full rundown once again then, it is Vincent Nyquist coming home with the win, with Norby and Fionn joining them on the podium. Then from 4th down we have Jeremy Glinner, Alexander Johansson, Jerry Van Bussel, Joris, Alex Berry, Dimitri Minic, Memento, Mattia De Campo, Franek Morowayak, Roman Foulon, Rookie, JXN, Maceo, Kinsey and Sandro Van Sand. So there we are then. That has been, as I say, the Brazilian Grand Prix. Thank you very much for joining us. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you along.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome indeed. And you never know, maybe we will see you in this box in the future again if we have difficulties with poor old Reese, who is unwell again for the second week running. So hopefully we see them back, but in the nicest possible way. If they don't come back next week, then of course this week and last week have shown that we've got some fantastic folks waiting in the wings to jump in and help us out in terms of running the stream and talking away alongside me. So thanks very much for watching, everybody. I have been Daniel Gilligan. In the virtual commentary box alongside me has been Alex. Thank you very much for watching. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega and Grid Rival, proudly supporting PSGL.